Hey guys, tonight we're climbing into a cathedral tower in France. The air is damp and cool, and the stones have been holding on to centuries of cold like stingy landlords who never learned about central heating. You press your hand to the wall, and the grit leaves a faint chalky dust on your palm. 7 days in this tower, ringing bells heavier than horses. You probably won't survive this, but let's pretend you will. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first step inside the stairwell is always the most dramatic. The air changes from open, square chatter to an echoing silence, where even your breath sounds like it doesn't belong. Your shoes scrape on worn steps hollowed by generations of feet. Each stone feels subtly uneven, like the tower is reminding you it was built by human hands, not precision machines. Historians still argue whether these towers were primarily civic pride projects or practical sound beacons. But either way, they became the heartbeat of a medieval town. Your eyes adjust slowly. A slit window slices in daylight. More suggestion than illumination. Dust drifts through that pale beam, swirling like lazy snow that forgot its season. You catch the smell of old iron mixed with pigeon feathers. Half noble, half ridiculous. Speaking of pigeons, you're already plotting how to dodge their ambush at the top. You'll lose that battle, of course. No bell ringer has ever left without at least one insult from above. By the 10th step, you're already aware of the absurdity of spending a week here. 7 days, just you, the bells, and the endless rhythm of metal lungs filling and emptying. Somewhere outside, the town hums with bakers, merchants, gossip. You'll be up here instead, dragging ropes as thick as your arm. Did you know some bells weighed several tons and required whole teams just to swing them properly? Imagine calling that your daily cardio. At least no gym membership required. You pause, hand on the railing. Though calling this narrow ridge a railing is generous. It's smoother than the stones, rubbed clean by cautious hands. There's graffiti carved into the mortar, initials, dates, perhaps a medieval teenager proving they too could deface public property. One even looks like a crude face, long nose, smug grin. Was it a joke? A saint? Maybe the world's first meme etched into cathedral stone. As you climb, your heartbeat syncs with the faint vibration overhead. You don't hear the bells yet, not really, but you feel them, as if the tower itself is breathing. That slow, steady reminder. Soon they'll sound, and when they do, the whole town will know. It's you tugging their day into order. And as your fingers tighten on the rope for the first time, you realize this is only the beginning of the climb. The stairwell continues to coil upward like a stone serpent, dragging you along step by step. Each turn feels the same, yet slightly different. The air grows thinner, cooler, sharper with every upward lurch. The walls close in, and your hand drags over stones polished smoother than any marble countertop. Though here the polish comes only from centuries of palms clinging for dear life. You trudge upward, boots scuffing with a rhythm you didn't choose but can't escape. Your calves are already protesting, whispering, this is going to be a long 7 days, and you can't disagree. You catch a glimpse of daylight through another slit window, this one smaller, set at a height designed to frustrate anyone under 6 feet tall. A weak ray spills across the step like a faint ribbon of gold. Dust clings to it, shimmering faintly, the only glamour in an otherwise gray ascent. Outside, the town carries on with its morning. Vendors calling, carts rattling, children shrieking with the kind of joy only possible before school lessons start. You hear it faintly through the slit, muted by thick stone, as though the world itself is determined to remind you that you're separated from ordinary life. There's something almost hypnotic about this spiral. Around and around you go, as though you've been trapped in some architectural joke. Historians still argue whether medieval architects intentionally designed staircases clockwise to advantage right-handed defenders with swords, or whether it's just coincidence. You don't have a sword, but you do have an increasingly sore right leg. And you'd happily argue with those historians yourself if you weren't so busy hunting. Halfway up, you pause to lean against the wall, feeling its dampness seeping through your sleeve. The tower breathes cold air, as though exhaling the sighs of all the bell ringers who came before you. For a moment, you let yourself imagine those unseen figures. A monk trudging these steps in the 1300s, muttering prayers with each rise. A conscripted boy in the 1500s, wishing he'd apprenticed as a baker instead. A 19th century caretaker, probably muttering about newfangled clocks stealing the bell's thunder. The echoes of their grumbles feel very alive here. You resume climbing, the sound of your steps changing with height. At first, the stairwell's acoustics gave you hollow echoes, like walking inside a giant ceramic jug. Now the tone sharpens, each footfall ringing crisp against the narrowing walls. Somewhere above, wood joins stone. Beams creak faintly, as if announcing you to the unseen bells. A cobweb brushes your forehead. You recoil slightly. Yes, you're fearless enough to tug on bronze monsters, but one stringy spider net, and suddenly, you're auditioning for a horror film. You swipe it away, muttering under your breath. The spiders here must be descendants of ancient clergy, guarding the tower more faithfully than most humans ever did. One of them probably scribbled in some long-lost chronicle, "Beware the cobwebs of St. Bellringer's Tower." Quirky as it sounds, villagers once believed spider webs were lucky charms against illness. And here you are, swatting away your medieval health insurance. The stairwell widens briefly, giving you a landing to pause. A small wooden door sits crooked in its frame. You tug at it, curiosity outweighing exhaustion, and it creaks open to reveal a storage nook. Inside, a cracked leather bucket, a coil of fraying rope, and an iron lantern blackened with soot. All relics of maintenance past, now abandoned like forgotten toys. You touch the lantern. It smudges your fingertips with ghostly ash. You wipe them on your tunic, the way every bell ringer before you must have done. And just like that, you're part of the chain of dusty tradition. Beyond the nook, the stairwell grows steeper, the steps narrower. You grip the wall more often, sliding your palm across gritty seams. By now, your breathing is heavier, though you try to pretend otherwise. After all, no one's here to watch, unless you count the pigeons at the top. They'll be waiting, smug little guardians of the belfry, ready to drop their blessings with impeccable aim. Scholars still argue whether pigeons were truly revered in medieval towns for their homing abilities, or simply tolerated as feathered nuisances. Either way, you're convinced these ones are plotting against you. Finally, a shaft of brighter light cuts down from above. You know you're nearing the chamber. Your ears pick up faint sounds. The groaning stretch of wood, the distant metallic hum that seems to live in the bronze even when silent. You climb faster now, impatient for a glimpse, for proof that this endless spiral does indeed end. And then, after one last sharp turn, you emerge into a wider space. The ceiling lifts away, Beams crisscross like the ribs of a giant beast. Dust floats in heavy patches, stirred by your arrival. You pause, leaning against the nearest timber, and simply breathe. The bells aren't visible yet, hidden higher still, but their presence is undeniable. The chamber vibrates faintly, a silent resonance like a heart waiting to beat. The floor creaks under your boots. Wooden planks give slightly, their edges chewed by centuries of moisture and boot heels. Somewhere in the corner lies a broken stool, its legs uneven, as though it lost a fight with gravity. You imagine some poor bell ringer dozing off, tipping backward mid-snore. If these walls could laugh, they'd still be chuckling about it. You move toward a ladder at the far side, the next step in your climb. Its rungs are worn smooth, shiny in places, and you grip them cautiously. Each rung feels warmer than the stone stairs, carrying the touch of countless hands. Higher and higher, until suddenly you poke your head into a loft where sunlight spills from arched windows. And there they are, the bells. Massive, hulking, bronze giants hanging in their timber frames. Their surfaces are mottled with age, streaked with verdigris like green tears frozen in place. The largest looms in the center, its clapper thick as your arm, dangling like a sword of judgment. You stare up, neck craning, and realize just how absurd this week is going to be. These bells weigh more than you, more than horses, more than entire carts of bread. Yet it's your job to make them sing. You rest your hand on the edge of the timber, letting your palm feel the faint vibration. Even silent, the bell hums like a sleeping dragon, ready to wake. Somewhere outside, the town ticks on with its errands, its chatter, its gossip. But here, suspended between earth and sky, you are in the beating heart of the cathedral's voice. Your calves ache, your palms sting from stone grit, but you grin faintly anyway. Because this absurd climb, this spiraling ascent into dust and pigeons and cold stone, it was worth it, if only to stand here, under these titans, ready for what comes next. You stand in the loft, surrounded by those hulking bells, and for a moment, the world feels both enormous and impossibly small. The bells dominate the chamber, bronze walls curved like the ribs of some metallic whale. They hang from timber frames that groan faintly, as if even the wood resents their weight. The ropes trail down like tangled snakes, each one tied off neatly on a peg, waiting for your hands. You stretch out and grab one, fingers wrapping around its rough fiber. It's thicker than you expected, tarred to preserve it, scratching your palm with the stubbornness of hemp. You give a gentle tug, and the bell sways slightly overhead, just enough to whisper its readiness. The loft smells of wood smoke and iron. Years of candle soot cling to the beams, mingling with pigeon droppings and the faint tang of weather seeping in through cracks. You wrinkle your nose, but you'll get used to it. People can get used to anything, even the stink of bells. That's the thing about old cathedrals. They weren't designed with comfort in mind. They were built to outlast you and to remind you that your body is temporary while their stones endure. Historians still argue whether cathedrals were more about religious devotion or civic competition, each town trying to outdo the next in height, grandeur, and bell size. Either way, the result towers over you now. You lean against the timber, staring up at the inscriptions etched along the bell's rim. Latin phrases in raised letters, each one cast into the bronze centuries ago. Some praise saints, others curse demons. A few simply record the names of donors who wanted immortality. Imagine giving your best ox to the foundry and forever tying your family name to a bell. That's one way to secure bragging rights, though not the kind you can hang above your mantelpiece. The rope hums faintly when you pluck it, like the world's heaviest guitar string. You grin at the absurdity. Who decided that dragging on these ropes, swinging tons of metal back and forth, was the best way to keep time for an entire town? A clock can tick quietly. A bell shakes the air itself, rattles bones, startles doves mid-flight. Quirky fact: some medieval communities believed the sound of bells could chase away storms, even demons. Ring loudly enough, and supposedly no lightning bolt dared strike. Modern meteorologists might raise an eyebrow, but back then, superstition and science weren't exactly on speaking terms. You rub your palms together, testing your grip. The rope feels alive, twitching faintly as if eager to be pulled. When you tug harder, the bell sways, and the chamber resonates with a deep groan. Not yet the full strike, but a hint of what's coming. Your arms vibrate, shoulders tightening with the effort, and you realize that each toll will be a battle. This isn't just pulling a rope. It's wrestling with gravity and momentum. You against the bell until the bell sings. You step back and glance at the smaller bells in the row. Their ropes are thinner, easier to grasp, and their bronze bodies glimmer faintly in the dim light. Each one has its own pitch, its own role in the cathedral's chorus. Together, they form a peal that can be heard for miles. You imagine the sound washing over fields, startling cows, reminding distant farmers that noon has arrived. Somewhere out there, a baker will glance at the sky, flour dusting his sleeves, and mutter thanks for the reminder. The bells aren't just noise. They're the heartbeat of the town. Still, not everyone loved them. There are accounts of people complaining about sleepless nights when special feasts demanded extra ringing. Picture yourself lying in bed, straw crackling under your weight, while above you a relentless clang echoes every few minutes. You'd curse the saints by name, and the poor bell ringer would become your favorite villain. Scholars still argue whether resentment of bell ringers was widespread or merely occasional. But it's safe to say nobody slept well on festival nights. You wander closer to the largest bell, drawn by its sheer size. Its lip hangs just above your head, and you can see faint dents along the rim. Centuries of striking have left their marks. You press your hand to the bronze, and it's cold, almost painfully so, but steady. It doesn't yield, it doesn't soften, yet when it swings, it will cry like a living thing. You try to picture molten metal being poured into molds, artisans sweating, sparks flying, villagers watching with awe. Foundries were dangerous places, and casting a bell of this magnitude was a gamble. Sometimes they cracked mid-pour. Sometimes they cooled unevenly. And sometimes, when luck and skill aligned, they gave birth to a voice that would carry for centuries. Your hand slides along the edge, and you notice faint scratches, perhaps a bell ringer before you had carved initials here. Or maybe it's just the work of weather and time. Either way, it feels like a secret only you can see in this dim chamber. You lean closer, listening. Even in silence, the bell seems to hum faintly in your bones. Is it your imagination, or is the bronze actually vibrating? Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed bells had souls, or whether that was just poetic metaphor. You're not sure either. Right now, it feels plausible. A gust of wind squeezes through an opening, and the chamber moans. The ropes sway gently, brushing each other, whispering like conspirators. You shift your weight uneasily. The thought occurs to you. What if you pull the rope too hard and the bell comes crashing down? It's never happened, not in living memory. But still, there's a first time for everything. And wouldn't it be the most boring headline? Local bell ringer flattened. Funeral conducted by rival bells. You chuckle under your breath. Humor helps. After all, this is your post for 7 days. You need to befriend the ropes, learn the bell's moods, and find comfort in the monotony. There's dignity in routine, even when your arms are burning and your ears are ringing. And if boredom ever threatens to drown you, you can always count the pigeons. They're already watching from the rafters, heads bobbing like judgmental old uncles. The sun shifts outside, sending a slant of gold through the arched window. It paints the bronze with warm highlights, transforming the bells into statues of fire. You squint, shielding your eyes, and imagine villagers below seeing only the tower's silhouette against the sky. They don't see you. They don't see the sweat, the ropes, the blisters. They just hear the voice of the cathedral and assume it sings by itself. But you know better. Your fingers tighten on the rope again, and this time you pull with more confidence. The bell stirs, groans, and then stills. It's a test, a rehearsal. Tomorrow, the real work begins. For now, you simply stand there, heart thudding, palms tingling, gazing at the silent giants. The loft feels like a waiting room between earth and heaven, and you are its reluctant caretaker. And as your eyes adjust once more to the shifting light, you know this climb, this contact, has changed you already. The first toll at dawn does not politely ask for your attention. It commands it. You stand in the half-dark chamber, rope already gripped in your hands, palms raw from practice pulls. Outside, the sky is gray with a thin line of pink at the horizon, the kind of reluctant morning that makes you wonder if the sun overslept. You shift your weight, give the rope a tug, and the bell stirs with a low groan, like some ancient creature waking. Then, with another pull, it swings fully, and the clapper slams against bronze. The air detonates. The sound crashes through the tower and pours down into the streets below. Your whole body vibrates. Even your teeth feel like they're rattling. The pigeons, those smug little tower tenants, explode from their roosts in a flurry of wings, clearly unimpressed by your efforts. Their feathers whirl around you like confetti at the world's most sarcastic parade. You laugh under your breath, though the sound vanishes under the bell's roar. Each strike is a tidal wave. You brace your feet, rope, jerking like a stubborn mule in your hands. Your shoulders ache, but adrenaline pushes you on. Bronze and wood, rope and human. Together they create something larger than any one part. You glance out the arched window and imagine the town hearing this alarm clock from the heavens. People rise, groggy, muttering. Farmers stretch. Bakers wipe flour on aprons. Children groan into pillows. The whole town is yanked awake, whether they like it or not. It's a curious fact that bells were once believed to drive away evil spirits at sunrise. The logic was simple. No demon could stand such righteous noise. Scholars still argue whether that belief was rooted in theology or in the simple truth that nothing ruins a devil's mischief faster than a headache. Either way, you feel oddly heroic, as though each clang is a shield against unseen shadows. The rhythm settles in. Pull, release, swing, crash. Your body becomes a metronome, a breathing part of the machinery. The sound rolls over the rooftops, echoing back faintly, like a ghost answering you from the hills. You grin through the sweat, realizing that you're not just ringing a bell. You're ringing history. This very sound, these vibrations, have carried across this town for centuries. A medieval baker heard it the same way you do now. A soldier returning from war, a widow saying morning prayers, a child clutching a crust of bread. All of them heard this same voice of bronze. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sequence ends. You release the rope, and the bell slows, swinging gently before resting back in silence. The chamber trembles once more, then settles. Your arms are jelly, and your ears hum with a ghostly echo. You sit on the nearest timber beam, catching your breath, sweat soaking your tunic. That's one toll done. Only countless more to go. You chuckle softly, a touch of sarcasm slipping out. Great workout plan. Who needs dumbbells when you have several tons of medieval bronze strapped to ropes? The tower returns to stillness, but not silence. The ropes sway lazily. Pigeons coo their complaints. Beams creak as if sighing in relief. You rub your palms, feeling the raised blisters forming already. The bells don't care. They've broken hands tougher than yours. You can almost hear them whispering, 7 days. Let's see if you last. You lean back and let your mind wander. Imagine being a villager below, hearing the dawn toll. You'd measure your entire day by these sounds: work, meals, prayer, sleep. Before pocket watches, bells were the clocks. They dictated life with a precision no rooster could match. Quirky tidbit. In some towns, bells even signaled when to close taverns, much to the dismay of anyone mid-pint. Imagine being scolded not by the barkeep, but by a 2-ton bronze curfew. You tilt your head toward the beams above. The carved graffiti catches your eye again. Initials and crude drawings etched by earlier bell ringers. You wonder if they, too, sat here after a dawn toll, shoulders aching, ears buzzing, trying to muster the courage for the next pull. Their lives have vanished, their names forgotten, but their marks remain, scratched into wood that still smells faintly of pitch and smoke. Historians still argue whether such graffiti was tolerated as casual tradition or condemned as defacing sacred property. Either way, here it is, stubbornly surviving. A breeze drifts through the arched window, carrying with it the smell of bread baking in town. Your stomach growls. You can almost picture the baker downstairs, pulling loaves from the oven, muttering about the infernal racket upstairs. He relies on your bell, but he curses it just the same. That's the balance of life here. Gratitude and irritation, tangled together like ropes in the tower. You rise, shake out your arms, and move toward the ropes again. They dangle quietly, almost innocent now. But you know their trick. They lull you into underestimating them. You'll pull again at noon, and then in the evening, and your body will pay the price each time. Still, there's a strange satisfaction in this burden. Few people will ever stand here, shoulder to shoulder with these bronze giants, hearing the world quake at their command. You rest your forehead against the timber frame, breathing slowly, savoring the faint hum still in your bones. It's not music in the traditional sense. No melody, no harmony, just raw vibration. Yet it's more powerful than any choir. The bells don't need lyrics. They are the lyrics. You step back, gaze one more time at the great bell, and nod. Dawn has been rung. The town has been stirred awake. The pigeons have cursed you. The villagers have muttered. And your arms have turned to noodles. But history has echoed, and you were the one who made it happen. As the sunlight thickens through the windows, painting golden patches across the dusty planks, you know the day is only beginning. The bells will call again soon, and when they do, you'll be waiting with sore hands and stubborn resolve. For now, though, you lean back against the wall. Let your eyes close for a moment, and breathe in the mingled scents of wood, bronze, dust, and bread drifting up from below. Dawn has spoken. The tower listens, and so do you. The morning settles into a steady rhythm, though your ears still carry the ghostly echo of dawn's toll. The ropes hang slack again, swaying faintly in the draft, as if mocking your temporary victory. You rub your palms, testing the tender skin where blisters are already forming. There will be no mercy from the hemp fibers. By the end of 7 days, your hands will look like maps of pain, each line a reminder that bronze does not yield easily to flesh. You lean against a timber beam and glance through the arched window. Below, the town has woken fully. From this height, the square resembles a painting, colorful and alive. Stalls have unfolded like flowers, canvas awnings stretched taut to shield goods from the rising sun. The fishmongers shout their wares, and you swear you can almost smell the catch even from here, sharp, briny, and slightly too ripe. The baker's chimney sends a thin ribbon of smoke into the sky. Blending with the scent of roasting chestnuts from another corner, voices mingle into a blur, bargaining, gossiping, laughing, arguing. The bells above you remain silent now, but you can feel their presence, looming like patient judges. You know what's coming. The noon toll, a different beast altogether. Morning was about waking the town. Noon will be about commanding it. In medieval times, that midday strike was more than just a marker of time. It told merchants when to reset prices, priests when to begin prayers, and workers when to take their brief pause. Historians still argue whether bells shaped the day's structure out of convenience or out of control, a way for the church to flex authority in every villager's ear. Either way, when you pull the rope at noon, you won't just be ringing metal. You'll be dictating rhythm to an entire community. You sit on a beam, wiping sweat with your sleeve, watching the square's tiny dramas unfold. A group of children chase each other around a cart, shrieking with joy. A woman haggles ferociously with a cloth seller, gesturing as though every scrap of linen were a battlefield. A dog darts between stalls, snatching what looks suspiciously like a sausage before vanishing under a wagon. The crowd erupts in laughter, though the butcher is less amused. You smile at the scene, knowing that your noon toll will slice through this noisy chaos like a blade through silk. Time creeps forward. The shadows shorten. You shift your weight from foot to foot, restless, the way one does when waiting for an appointment you can't avoid. The ropes are still, but in your mind, they twitch with anticipation. You imagine the bells above sighing impatiently. Come on, ringer. It's nearly time. When the sun finally stands high, you plant your feet firmly, grip the thick rope, and heave. The bell resists for a heartbeat, then yields with a groan that rolls through the beams. Another pull, harder this time, and the clapper slams bronze. Noon has arrived. The strike ricochets through the chamber, rolling down the stairwell like thunder bottled in stone. You feel it in your chest, in your ribs, in the soles of your feet. You glance through the window mid-pull just to catch the scene below. Sure enough, the square freezes for an instant. Merchants pause mid-shout, customers mid-gesture. The fishmonger's hand hovers above his scale, as though the sound itself commanded stillness. Then, just as quickly, the rhythm resumes, but altered, slower, more deliberate, as if the toll reminded them of something larger than their bargains. Pull, swing, crash. Each clang seems to referee the marketplace. Arguments soften, laughter punctuates deals. Somewhere, a friar bows his head for prayer, lips moving silently. A blacksmith wipes sweat from his brow and stretches, hammer resting on the anvil. Even the dog reappears, tail wagging, as though the sound itself has called him back for another attempt at larceny. There's a quirky tidbit whispered in local lore. Some believed that bells, when rung at noon, carried the power to purify the air. Illness, they thought, couldn't survive in vibrations this strong. Imagine believing that every lungful of sound made you healthier. In truth, the air here smells mostly of fish and sweat, but the illusion is comforting. You grit your teeth against the pull of the rope, muscles burning. Each toll is an effort, and though the bell's momentum helps, it's still you anchoring the swing. Sweat stings your eyes, but you don't falter. This is your duty, absurd as it feels. Medieval cardio, you think again, except no one here is handing out energy drinks. Just blisters, bruises, and the faint satisfaction of being the reason the town knows what time it is. By the final strike, your arms are shaking, your back damp with sweat. You let the rope ease back into stillness, chest heaving. The bell sways, slower and slower, then settles like a beast curling back to sleep. The chamber exhales with you. Silence returns, but not true silence, because your ears hum with phantom tones, a choir that refuses to leave. You slump against the timber, letting your legs dangle over the beam. Through the window, the market is alive again, but altered. Deals are struck with more urgency now. People know the day is already half spent. Children drag their feet homeward, pouting at curtailed games. The baker sweeps crumbs from his stall, preparing for the afternoon rush. Life bends around the sound you unleashed. It's humbling, in a way. You're just one figure hauling a rope, yet your effort ripples through dozens of lives below. You trace the rope's fibers with a finger, noting how each strand twists against its neighbor, how the tar leaves faint smudges on your skin. The rope is both your enemy and your partner. Without it, the bell would be silent. With it, you suffer the ache. You sigh, a blend of pride and resignation. Leaning back, you let your eyes wander across the rafters. More graffiti stares back. Initials, dates, odd symbols. One looks like a crooked heart, another like a crude drawing of a dog. Did some long-ago bell ringer pause between tolls to carve these, waiting for his arms to stop trembling? Maybe he, too, stared out at the town below, feeling both powerful and invisible. Historians still argue whether such carvings were intended as legacy or merely as distraction from boredom. Either way, you're grateful for their company. The afternoon light softens. A breeze carries up the smell of apples from a vendor's cart. You close your eyes, savoring it, even as your muscles throb. Your body begs for rest, but the bells will not care. Evening waits, with its own demands, its own tolling, its own grip on the town's rhythm. You stretch your fingers, flex your shoulders, and prepare yourself. Because here in this tower, time does not flow on its own. It must be wrung into existence, pulled into shape by sore hands and stubborn will. Evening arrives slowly, almost reluctantly, as if the sun itself has grown tired of the day's commotion. From your perch in the tower, you watch the light bend into long shadows that stretch across the square, softening everything below into muted shapes. The stalls begin to close, one by one, canvas sheets flapping as merchants tie them down. The fishmongers pack their scales, the bakers sweep crumbs into baskets, and the chestnut seller shakes the last coals from his brazier. All of it unfolds beneath you, the hum of human life drifting up in muffled tones. Soon, it will be time for the bells again. This time, to mark the transition from daylight bustle to candlelit quiet. The ropes sway faintly, as if restless, eager to sing once more. You stretch your arms, wincing at the ache that has settled deep into your muscles. Already, the skin of your palms feels raw, blisters rising like small protests. You flex your fingers, wondering how many more pulls before the pain becomes unbearable. Then again, the bells do not care. Their duty is older than you, older than anyone in the square. You are only the latest set of hands in a long chain of ringers who cursed and sweated in this same chamber. The evening toll carries a different weight from the dawn or noon chimes. Dawn was a wake-up call. Noon was a command. Evening, however, is a benediction, a blanket of sound that drapes itself across rooftops and alleyways, guiding townsfolk back to their hearths. In medieval France, this toll was often called the curfew bell, from the French phrase couvre-feu, meaning cover fire. When it rang, families were expected to extinguish open flames, a precaution against devastating fires in timbered towns. Historians still argue whether curfew bells were strictly enforced or more symbolic, but the principle lingered. The sound of evening bells meant safety, meant order, meant the drawing of the day to a close. You brace yourself, gripping the rope, feeling its familiar scratch against your palms. With a deep breath, you pull, and once again, the great bell stirs. Its groan rolls through the beams, and then comes the strike. A deep, sonorous voice that fills the chamber and pours out over the town. The vibration surges into your bones, rattling your ribs, humming in your skull. The pigeons, as predictable as ever, flap indignantly from their perches, circling the tower in offended spirals. The sound rolls across the square, where villagers look up briefly, acknowledging the call. Candles flicker to life in windows. A mother gathers her children, herding them homeward with the urgency of habit. A tavern door swings open, laughter spilling out, only to be swallowed again as the bell drowns it. The clang is both command and comfort, a reminder that the day's tasks are done, and that night belongs to rest. Or, if you're unlucky, to more toil under flickering light. Pull, swing, crash. The rhythm is slower now, more measured. The bell does not shout. It sighs. Its tone is lower than the noon chime, resonant in a way that seems to settle dust and soothe tempers. You imagine the villagers hearing it like a lullaby, even as you grit your teeth against the strain in your arms. The paradox is almost comic. You sweat and struggle, blisters bursting, to deliver serenity to people who never see your face. A quirky detail drifts into your mind. In some towns, children were told that the evening bell was the voice of angels calling them to bed. Disobeying meant risking the displeasure of those celestial guardians. You can almost picture medieval parents smirking with relief as their little ones, too frightened to argue, scurried under blankets. Practical parenting, delivered in bronze. The toll continues, each strike reverberating into the darkening sky. You find yourself counting silently, though you lose track quickly, lost in the wash of sound. Your body sways with the rhythm, muscles burning, sweat dripping into your eyes. The rope jerks and bites, but you hold on, refusing to falter. The bell commands obedience, and you obey, even as you curse it under your breath. Finally, the sequence ends. The rope slackens. The bell slows. The clapper rests. The chamber exhales its resonance into silence, leaving only the faint creak of beams and the coo of returning pigeons. You stagger back, wiping your face, chest heaving. Your arms are trembling, your legs weak. And yet, there is a strange peace here, an odd satisfaction in knowing you've pulled the day to a close. You drift toward the window, leaning on the frame. gazing down at the town. The square is quieter now, emptied of most stalls, only a few lingering figures crossing with hurried steps. Candles glow in clustered windows, tiny fires captured in glass. The streets are narrow rivers of shadow, punctuated by lanterns. The world looks softer from here, less frantic, as though the bell's voice really did smooth the edges of daily strife. And yet, not all is stillness. From a corner tavern comes the faint rise of song, off-key but enthusiastic. Laughter follows, loud enough to reach even your high perch. Clearly, not everyone takes the evening toll as a signal to rest. Scholars still argue whether medieval taverns respected curfew bells or ignored them entirely, but from the sound below, you'd wager the latter. The bell may order quiet, but ale orders otherwise. You settle onto a beam, rubbing your aching shoulders, and allow yourself a small smile. This is the rhythm of the tower. Exertion, silence, observation, repeat. Life becomes a loop of ropes and echoes, punctuated by the distant dramas of villagers who likely never spare a thought for the tired figure in the belfry. You wonder if any of them, pausing in their chores tonight, looked up at the tower and imagined you here, dangling from ropes, wrestling bronze into obedience. Probably not. And that's fine. Bell ringers were never meant to be admired. They were meant to be invisible, their work swallowed by sound. The evening deepens. Stars prick the horizon, faint against the last streaks of orange. The square empties further until only shadows move between houses. The air cools, drifting through the window with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. You breathe it in, letting the chill soothe your overheated skin. For a fleeting moment, you feel almost weightless, suspended between earth and sky, part of the tower itself. But fatigue creeps in quickly. Your hands throb, your arms ache, your back stiffens. You know you'll sleep poorly tonight, with phantom rings humming in your bones. That's the bell ringer's curse. The sound lingers long after silence returns. Still, you wouldn't trade it. There is dignity in this strange labor, even when it grinds you down. The bells will call again tomorrow, and you'll answer. That is the bargain. You close your eyes, letting the quiet seep into you, even as your body hums with remembered vibration. Evening has been rung. The town has obeyed. And you, weary but unbroken, remain in the shadow of the bronze giants, waiting for night to deepen into silence. The night is thick and restless inside the tower. You lie stretched on a rough wooden plank, pushed against the beams, trying to convince your body that this counts as a bed. The wood is uneven, pressing into your shoulder blades, and every time you shift, the planks creak like old bones protesting movement. You pull your cloak tighter, though it doesn't do much against the damp air that seeps through cracks in the stone. The tower is colder at night, as though the day's warmth never managed to climb this high. Sleep should come easily after the labor of dawn, noon, and evening. But the truth is that the tower does not rest. Your ears hum with the phantom echoes of the bells. Every time you close your eyes, you feel the ropes twitching, hear the clapper swinging, sense the thunder rolling through your bones again. It's not quiet here. Not really. The silence is alive with invisible sound, a ghostly resonance only you seem to hear. Some bell ringers used to swear that they could hear bronze breathing in the still hours. And lying here now, you believe them. The pigeons return to their roosts, wings fluttering as they tuck themselves along the beams. Their coos echo in the chamber, a strange lullaby, equal parts soothing and irritating. One particularly bold bird lands close to your head, staring at you with that sideways pigeon gaze that makes you feel judged. You wave your hand lazily, and it flaps off, scattering dust that floats through the dim light of a nearby lantern. You stare at the ceiling beams, tracing the thick joinery, marveling at how the wood has held up all these centuries. Historians still argue whether oak or chestnut was more often used for these frames. But either way, this skeleton of timbers has outlived countless ringers. You are merely another figure passing through its long vigil. The thought is both humbling and a little depressing. You sigh, shift again, and the plank groans. Somewhere outside, a dog barks, answered by another further away. The town has quieted, but not fully. A tavern song drifts faintly, slurred voices attempting harmony. The sound rises to the loft, tangled with the ghost of bells still ringing in your head. It's oddly comforting, proof that life continues below, even while you endure this solitude. You roll onto your side, pulling your cloak tighter, trying to block the draft. Your mind drifts toward odd tales you've heard, villagers believing that sleeping near the bells could drive a person mad. Quirky superstition, perhaps, but lying here, vibrating with phantom tones, you begin to see why they thought so. The sound never truly ends. It lingers like a phantom weight pressing against your skull. If you stay too long, perhaps your thoughts really would unravel, slipping into endless echoes. The lantern sputters, casting long shadows that sway across the chamber. You watch them crawl over the graffiti scratched into the beams. Initials, crude drawings, maybe even tally marks. Were those notches made by another bell ringer counting sleepless nights, just like you? You trace the lines with your eyes, and for a moment, you feel less alone. The ghosts of your predecessors are here, whispering through scratches and splinters. Your stomach growls. Dinner was meager, hard bread and a hunk of cheese, eaten while leaning against a beam. The memory makes you grimace. Chewing bread this tough is practically exercise in itself. Still, it fills the gap, and you're grateful enough not to complain. Well, maybe just a little. You mutter to yourself about the injustice of feeding someone tasked with wrestling several tons of bronze on crumbs, better suited to patching a roof. The bells loom above, shadows of giants. You can't see their full shapes from your bed, but you feel their presence pressing down. They rest now, but you know they're not truly asleep. They're waiting for dawn, for your hands on the ropes, for another round of thunder. You close your eyes, but your body twitches at every creak of the beams, every rustle of wings. Somewhere down the stairwell, you hear a faint scuffle. Perhaps a stray cat slipped inside, hunting pigeons. Or maybe it's just your imagination, sharpened by fatigue. Bell ringers in old records often reported hearing strange noises at night. Whispers, footsteps, even phantom tolls. Historians still argue whether these were signs of exhaustion, spiritual visions, or simply rats. Whatever the cause, you pull your cloak tighter and remind yourself that you are alone. Probably. You roll onto your back again, staring into the darkness. Your thoughts wander to the villagers who will sleep soundly tonight, unaware of your struggle. Their dreams will carry them through the night, while you wrestle with echoes. It's a lonely kind of service, invisible, but essential. They'll wake tomorrow to the dawn bell, never thinking about the body that dragged itself through the ropes to deliver that sound. There's a strange comfort in that anonymity, but also a sting. You laugh quietly, whispering, "Sleep well, my ungrateful audience." The minutes blur, turning into hours. You drift in and out of shallow rest, waking often to the sensation of phantom vibrations in your chest. At one point, you dream, or perhaps only imagine, that the bells toll by themselves. You see them swinging in the darkness, clappers striking bronze without your hands on the ropes. The sound is deafening, endless, and you wake with a start, heart pounding, only to find the chamber silent. You chuckle softly at your own fear, though the sweat on your forehead betrays it. Your muscles ache from stillness as much as from effort. You stretch your arms, groaning quietly, careful not to startle the pigeons into another flurry. The night feels endless, but you know dawn will come soon enough, dragging you back to the ropes. You close your eyes again, forcing yourself to breathe slowly, to find some sliver of calm in the hum of silence. Sleep finally begins to take root, shallow but real. You drift, cocooned in the damp air, lulled by the coos of pigeons and the faint rustle of the square below. The bells remain still, but their phantom voices echo in your bones, a lullaby both heavy and haunting. And in that uneasy peace, you surrender to rest, knowing dawn will tear you from it all too soon. Morning does not so much arrive as seep into the cracks of the tower. You stir on your uneven plank, cloak tangled around your legs, body stiff from hours of shallow sleep. Your ears hum before you even open your eyes, phantom tolls still ringing, as though the bells crept into your dreams and refused to leave. You roll onto your side and groan. Every joint complains, every muscle tight, and your palms throb with raw blisters that sting when you flex your fingers. You mutter a curse under your breath, though it comes out more like a sigh. The first true sound is the dripping. At first you think it's just another phantom echo, but then you feel the dampness in the air. A storm has rolled in overnight. Rain taps against the windows and seeps through cracks in the roof, finding paths down the stone walls. In one corner, a steady drip falls into a puddle that glimmers faintly in the weak morning light. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and listen. The rain is not gentle. It hammers against the roof with a relentless rhythm, a percussion rivaling the bells themselves. The ropes hang heavy this morning. You cross to them and run your hand along the thick fibers. They are slick, swollen with damp, tar leaking faintly where the rain has reached. Your palm comes away sticky, and you wipe it on your tunic with a grimace. Ropes and water are a miserable combination. Every pull today will feel heavier, every swing slower. Even the bells themselves carry the storm. Bronze is no stranger to rain, but the moisture makes them feel weighted, as though the storm has crept into their very voices. You step to the arched window, squinting out into the town below. The square is a patchwork of umbrellas and cloaks, vendors shouting louder than usual to be heard over the downpour. Canvas awnings sag under pooled water, and the fishmonger frantically sweeps rain from his stall with a broom. Children splash gleefully through puddles, while their parents scold them in vain. Smoke from chimneys rises weakly, smothered by the damp air. The whole scene feels heavier, as though the storm has draped the town in a wet cloak. Historians still argue whether medieval towns truly believed bells could repel storms. Some records suggest that during thunderstorms, ringers were ordered to sound the bells, hoping the vibrations would drive lightning away. Others claim the practice was mostly symbolic, a show of defiance against forces beyond human control. Looking at the storm now, you feel the absurdity and the weight of that belief. If lightning does strike, it will strike high. And where are you? High, in the tower, tugging wet ropes attached to a giant lightning rod. Excellent. You pull your cloak tighter and chuckle at the irony. You probably won't survive this, you whisper, repeating the joke from your first climb. Humor, however grim, is the only shield you have. The ropes sway faintly in the draft, and you imagine the bells smirking, ready to see if you'll flinch when thunder joins their chorus. When the time comes, you plant your feet firmly, grip the slick rope, and pull. It bites at your hands, slides treacherously, but you hold tight. The bell stirs sluggishly, as though reluctant to wake. You tug again, harder, and finally the clapper strikes bronze. The sound booms out, deeper than yesterday, muffled by the storm, but no less commanding. Rain pelts through the open window, carried by the wind, stinging your cheek. You grit your teeth and keep pulling. The resonance rolls through the chamber, mingling with thunder that cracks in the distance. For a moment, you cannot tell whether the boom in your chest belongs to sky or bell. The town below shudders under the combined assault. Villagers glance upward, some crossing themselves, others muttering. A few smile faintly, reassured by the ancient ritual. If the bells ring, perhaps the storm will pass. The pigeons, usually unflappable, panic in chaos. They launch from the beams in frantic spirals, feathers sticking wetly as rain follows them inside. One nearly collides with your head, and you duck, laughing despite yourself. Even you can't handle this one, huh? You mutter, watching the birds scatter. The pulls grow harder as the rope resists, soaked fibers biting into your skin. Each clang requires every ounce of your strength. Your shoulders scream, your arms shake, but you refuse to falter. This is not just duty, it is defiance. You drag sound into the storm, daring thunder to answer. Bronze against sky, human against weather. You imagine villagers huddling in doorways, listening, whispering that the bell ringer is holding the storm at bay. If only they knew you're just clinging to a rope, praying not to slip. Finally, the toll ends, the rope slackens, the bell slows, and silence creeps in, broken only by rain hammering on the roof. Your chest heaves, sweat mixing with water dripping from the beams. You wipe your face and stagger back, leaning against the timber, arms trembling. You glance at your palms, now rawer than ever, skin blistered and darkened with tar. They throb angrily, promising worse to come. You wander to the puddle in the corner, watching the ripples from steady drips above. The water is murky, filled with dust and flecks of straw. You crouch and splash your face, the cold shocking but refreshing. It clears the haze from your mind, if only for a moment. The tower groans as wind presses against it, the timbers creaking in protest. Yet it holds, as it has for centuries, shrugging off storms as though they were mere inconveniences. Quirky lore whispers through your thoughts. Some claimed that rain-striking bells was holy water multiplied, that droplets running from bronze held special blessing. Looking at the wet ropes and your blistered palms, you doubt the sanctity of the experience, but the story lingers. Perhaps some villager once collected storm water dripping from a bell, believing it cured fevers. Maybe the mind finds comfort where the body finds pain. You slump onto the beam, watching the rain blur the square below into a watercolor painting. Merchants huddle under awnings, townsfolk scurry across puddles, children stomp with glee despite scoldings. The bell's voice has faded, but the storm lingers, stubborn as any bronze giant. You close your eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of rain. It is a different kind of music, softer, relentless, ancient as the bells themselves. Your body aches, your hands sting, and your ears hum, but a strange calm settles in. The storm cannot be stopped, but it can be endured. Just like the bells, just like the endless climb, just like this strange vigil in the tower. When the rain eases, the ropes will dry. When the sun returns, the bronze will sing brighter. And when dawn comes again, you will be here, ready to pull, no matter how heavy the ropes, no matter how fierce the storm. The storm finally loosens its grip on the town, leaving behind soaked cobblestones and dripping roofs. The air smells fresher now, scrubbed clean by rain, though dampness still clings to your clothes and hair. You stretch your arms, muscles groaning, as faint sunlight filters through the clouds. The ropes, though still damp, are lighter than they were at dawn. Yet you know the day will not pass quietly. This is a feast day, and the bells will not be allowed to rest. From your perch in the loft, you peer down at the square. Despite the storm's aftermath, villagers are gathering in greater numbers than usual. Banners flap along the streets, their colors muted but cheerful against gray skies. Stalls overflow with brighter goods, loaves stacked higher, barrels of wine opened, and bundles of herbs tied with ribbon. The market buzzes with unusual energy. Children weave through the crowd, clutching sticks with scraps of cloth tied to them, makeshift flags for the celebration. The storm may have dampened the streets, but not the spirits. You wipe your palms on your tunic and glance up at the bells. They loom silently, yet their presence feels impatient, as though even the bronze giants are eager to roar in honor of the feast. Today you will ring not just at dawn, noon, and evening, but many more times besides. The clergy will demand peals for processions, extra strikes for ceremonies, and long sequences to mark sermons. You sigh, rubbing the raw patches on your palms. A festival for the town is a punishment for the ringer. Historians still argue whether feast days were more about piety or politics. Certainly, they honored saints, but they also reminded townsfolk of church power and civic pride. Bells were weapons in that display, louder than trumpets, heard farther than proclamations. Today, you are their unwilling general, commanding the air with every pull. The first demand comes mid-morning. You brace yourself, grip the rope, and heave. The bell swings more easily now, freed of the storm's damp weight. Its strike is thunderous, a declaration that the feast has begun. The sound rolls over the town, bouncing off wet rooftops, slipping into alleys, startling dogs that bark in chorus. From the window, you see the procession forming, priests in embroidered robes, acolytes carrying candles that sputter in the breeze, villagers following with uneven but enthusiastic steps. The bells ring longer than usual, a cascade of sound that seems to stretch forever. You lose track of how many times you've pulled, each clang blurring into the next. Your arms ache, your chest heaves, but the rhythm carries you onward. The bells and the crowd below are locked together in one great performance. You imagine the sound shaking loose rainwater from the rooftops, dripping down in applause. At last, the sequence ends. You slump against the beam, wiping sweat from your brow. The town, however, surges forward. The procession winds its way through the square, villagers singing tunelessly but passionately. Vendors shout louder, taking advantage of the gathering to sell treats and trinkets. Children dart between legs, waving their ragged flags. Even the pigeons seem caught up in the energy, swirling around the tower in noisy flocks. You chuckle at the chaos, though your body protests. Feast days may delight the town, but they are merciless on bell ringers. Your palms sting with every flex, fresh blisters forming under older ones. You wonder how many more pulls you can manage before skin gives way entirely. Yet the bells will not wait. Soon enough, the clergy will signal again. And they do. By noon, you are back at the ropes, dragging the bronze into song once more. The sound this time is almost jubilant, as though the bells themselves share in the celebration. The resonance feels brighter, less oppressive than the storm's toll. Villagers below cheer as the clangs roll over them. Some even dance, clapping awkwardly in time, their laughter rising like smoke. A quirky tidbit drifts to mind. In certain towns, feast day bells were believed to carry blessings directly from heaven. People claimed that standing under their sound could cure ailments, or at least bring good fortune. You watch as villagers below lift their faces, smiling, letting the sound wash over them like sunlight. Perhaps belief alone is its own medicine. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion weighs heavy on you. Sweat drips into your eyes, your shoulders burn, and every pull feels slower. You collapse onto a beam during brief pauses, drinking water from a small jug, crumbs of bread sticking to your fingers. Still, you rise when called. The bells are insatiable on days like this. The square grows wilder as the feast continues. A troupe of musicians sets up near a fountain, fiddles screeching, drums thumping. A group of men begins an impromptu wrestling match, cheered on by jeering friends. Children chase each other in circles, tripping over their own flags. And, inevitably, tempers flare. You spot two vendors shouting, one waving a ladle like a weapon, the other brandishing a loaf of bread as though it were a sword. The crowd laughs, but you know such scuffles can grow quickly. Through it all, your bells referee the chaos. Each toll interrupts arguments, each clang forcing heads upward. The sound binds the crowd, even if only for a heartbeat. It is both command and comfort, uniting the town under vibrations that ignore quarrels and laughter alike. By evening, when the last sequence is demanded, you are nearly broken. Your arms tremble with every pull, your back aches, your palms raw, and bleeding in small patches. Yet the bells roar stronger than ever, as though feeding on your exhaustion. The sound pours into the night sky, mingling with laughter, song, and distant thunder still muttering at the horizon. When at last the ropes slacken, you collapse fully, lying on the wooden planks, chest heaving. The town below still bustles, but you no longer care. The bells have drained every ounce of strength. The chamber hums with fading resonance, a ghostly aftertaste of the day's feast. Historians still argue whether feast day excess strengthened community bonds or merely frayed tempers. From your view in the tower, it seems to do both at once. But either way, the bells are the constant, booming, unyielding, indifferent to joy or quarrel. You close your eyes, letting exhaustion cradle you. The celebration below will rage on, but here in the loft, you drift between wakefulness and sleep, still vibrating with the memory of bronze thunder. The feast day fades into memory, but the tower does not permit you much rest. When morning breaks, you wake stiff and sore, limbs aching as though the bells themselves had walked across your body during the night. Your eyes are gritty with half-sleep, your palms rough maps of blisters and tar, but the ropes still hang in the chamber, waiting like patient beasts. The bells demand constancy, and you are bound to answer. Yet between the duties of ringing, there are long stretches of quiet. You settle onto one of the beams, pulling your cloak tight against the morning chill. And for the first time in days, you let yourself linger in the stillness. The chamber is hushed, except for the faint scratching of pigeons above, and the occasional creak of timbers adjusting to the day's warmth. You breathe deeply, inhaling the mingled scents of old wood, rope fibers, dust, and the faint metallic tang of bronze. It is in these pauses that the tower feels less like a burden and more like a strange sanctuary. Your eyes wander to the walls. The graffiti carved into wood and stone catches your attention again. But today, you study it more carefully. Initials scratched with uneven hands, dates half crumbled by time, crude shapes that might be animals or saints, or simply doodles born of boredom. You run your fingers over one particularly deep carving, a circle enclosing a cross. Was it a blessing, a prayer for strength, or merely the idle work of a ringer with too much time between tolls? Historians still argue whether these marks were deliberate acts of devotion or casual vandalism. But here in the loft, they feel like voices layered across centuries. You lean back and let your gaze travel upward to the beams above. Dust floats in shafts of sunlight, shifting like slow snow. In that quiet haze, you almost hear the echoes of those who came before you, muttering, coughing, perhaps singing softly to themselves. You smile faintly. Perhaps every bell ringer leaves some piece of themselves here, if not carved into wood, then woven into the air. Outside, the square begins to stir. You hear it before you see it, the low murmur of voices, the clatter of wheels, the bark of dogs. You step to the arched window and lean out, resting your elbows on the cold stone ledge. The town bustles with morning life. Merchants arrange their stalls. Wagons roll across cobbles. Children chase each other with shrieks of laughter. The air carries smells both pleasant and less so. Baking bread, fresh herbs, dung from carts. From above, all of it blends into a patchwork of daily rhythm. The bells may mark the hours, but between their commands, life has its own cadence. You notice how the baker wipes flour from his hands, how the blacksmith pauses to stretch his shoulders, how a group of women pause mid-conversation to share bread. None of them glance up at the tower. To them, it is simply part of the landscape, as natural as the sky. You are invisible, yet your work shapes their day. The irony amuses you. As you watch, a small boy lingers near the fountain, staring up at the cathedral. His clothes are patched, his face smudged, but his eyes are bright. He tilts his head as though listening for something, perhaps the next toll. You wonder if he imagines the bells ringing by themselves, or if he knows there is someone hidden high above, tugging ropes until his arms ache. Maybe one day he will climb these stairs himself. Maybe he will carve his initials in the wood. Maybe he will curse the pigeons, laugh at his blisters, and marvel at the same view. Your stomach rumbles, breaking your reverie. You pull a small satchel closer and retrieve the day's ration. Coarse bread and a lump of cheese. The bread is stale enough to chip a tooth, and the cheese has a rind tougher than leather, but it fills the emptiness. You eat slowly, listening to the muffled sounds of town life below. Quirky fact: some medieval towns paid bell ringers not only with coins, but with bread and beer. You suppose you should be grateful for the bread, though you wouldn't mind the beer right now. When the food is gone, you wipe crumbs from your cloak and stretch out on the beam again. The loft is quiet, save for the faint hum of the bells overhead. Even in stillness, they resonate, as though holding on to memory of sound. You close your eyes and let the silence wash over you. For once, the phantom ringing in your ears softens, replaced by the steady rhythm of your own breath. You think about the debates that swirl among scholars and villagers alike. Were bells tools of devotion, instruments of control, Or simply practical clocks? Historians still argue, and lying here now, you see pieces of each truth. They call the faithful to prayer, but also remind merchants to pack up their wares. They mark holy days with grandeur, but also chase children home at curfew. The bells are many things at once, just as the tower is both prison and refuge. The sunlight shifts, warming the wood beneath you. You open your eyes, watching dust motes drift lazily. A pigeon coos above, feathers ruffling, and you chuckle softly. You and I are stuck here together, you murmur. The bird tilts its head, unimpressed, before preening its wing. Companionship is scarce, but it will have to do. Eventually, the silence breaks with the signal for the next toll. You rise slowly, stretching sore limbs, and grip the rope once more. The fibers bite into your palms, but you ignore the sting. With a steady pull, you set the bell in motion. The chamber fills with its voice, deep and resonant, rolling outward into the town. You feel it in your chest, in your bones, a reminder that the tower never truly rests. When the sequence ends, you let the rope slip back into stillness. Your arms tremble, but your spirit feels strangely lighter. The tolling may exhaust you, but the silence afterward carries a peace unlike any other. You sink back onto the beam, listening as the town resumes its rhythm below. Here in the loft, between noise and quiet, between duty and rest, you exist in a strange kind of balance. The bells are your burden, but also your anchor. They tether you to history, to the town, to the invisible thread of time itself. And in these quiet moments, as dust drift and pigeons coo, you almost feel grateful. The loft is still and dim, yet your thoughts wander toward the stories you have heard whispered about the bells themselves. People in the town speak of them with a kind of reverence, not just as instruments of time or ceremony, but as objects of power. You sit cross-legged on a beam, rubbing your sore palms, and think about how strange it is that a mass of bronze could inspire fear, devotion, and superstition all at once. One story says that bells can drive away storms. You've already heard that one many times, and after yesterday's rain, you are not entirely convinced. But another tale claims that bells, when rung properly, can cure sickness. Mothers would bring sick children into the square and hold them up to the vibrations, hoping the deep resonance might shake the illness loose. It sounds absurd to modern ears, yet when you think about the hum still lodged in your ribs after each toll, you can almost imagine how someone might believe in its healing power. You tug absently on the rope nearest to you, not enough to stir the bell, but just enough to feel the tension. The fibers are frayed from centuries of use, smelling faintly of tar and sweat. You close your eyes and listen. Even at rest, the bells seem to breathe faintly, a low hum lingering like the last note of a song. Quirky detail. There are records of villagers believing that bells could frighten away witches. Supposedly, the bronze voices were too pure, too holy, for dark spirits to endure. Some towns even gave their bells names, treating them almost like living guardians. Historians still argue whether these practices were rooted in genuine faith, or whether they served as convenient ways for the church to reinforce authority. After all, when people believe that only the cathedral's bells stand between them and plague, storm, or witchcraft, they are less likely to challenge the institution behind those bells. You lean your head back against the beam and smile faintly. Power dressed as protection. It is a trick older than stone towers themselves. The quiet stretches on, broken only by pigeons, shifting above, and the occasional groan of wood. You begin tracing shapes in the dust motes, floating through the air. For a moment, You imagine yourself not as a tired ringer, but as some kind of alchemist, studying the mysterious energy of sound. If vibrations can rattle your bones and echo in your dreams, why not believe they could heal a fever or chase away evil? The line between fact and faith feels thinner up here, blurred by the constant hum of bronze. When the time comes for the next toll, you rise reluctantly. Your body aches, but duty does not wait. You plant your feet, grip the rope, and heave. The bell stirs, slow at first, then gathering speed, until the clapper slams into bronze with a resounding crash. The sound rolls outward, strong and clear, rattling dust from the beams. You pull again and again, arms burning, until the sequence is complete. As the bell slows, you stagger back, catching your breath. The silence afterward is heavy, almost oppressive, as though the tower itself is listening. You wipe sweat from your brow and sink down onto the beam again, chest heaving. The phantom hum lingers, curling around your ribs, refusing to let go. Below, the town stirs in response. You can see people pausing, crossing themselves, murmuring to each other. Some glance upward, their faces a mix of awe and routine acceptance. For them, the bell is both familiar and mysterious, part of daily life, yet never fully understood. They may joke about its noise, curse it when it interrupts sleep, but deep down, they still believe in its strange magic. You chew on a crust of bread, watching the square below. A woman leads a child by the hand, pausing to let him stare at the tower. He points upward, eyes wide, lips moving as though asking a question. The mother answers with a nod, perhaps telling him the same stories you've been mulling over. That the bells protect, that the bells heal, that the bells guard against unseen terrors. You smile faintly. Whether the stories are true or not, they live on in whispers, passed down through generations. You finish your meager meal and lean back, letting your eyes wander across the graffiti again. One carving catches your attention, a crudely drawn star. You run your fingers over it, wondering if some long-ago ringer believed the star added power to the bell's voice, or if he was simply bored between tolls. Either way, the mark lingers, another thread in the tapestry of superstition that surrounds this chamber. The air grows warmer as the sun rises higher. Dust shimmers in golden light, and the pigeons coo lazily above. You close your eyes, letting the silence sink into you. Though it is never true silence, the hum remains, faint but insistent. A reminder that the bells are never fully still. Historians still argue whether such superstitions were harmless folklore or manipulative tools. You are no scholar, but up here in the loft, you can feel how easily a tired mind might believe in the bell's hidden powers. When sound can shake the very bones of your body, is it so far-fetched to imagine it might also shake loose sickness or spirits? You chuckle softly at your own wandering thoughts. Perhaps, after too many days in the tower, you're starting to believe the stories yourself. Still, there's comfort in them. If the bells carry blessings, then every blister, every ache, every sleepless night means you've delivered more than just sound. You've delivered protection. You stretch your legs across the beam, staring out the window at the town below. The square bustles as always, merchants shouting, children laughing, carts rattling. Life goes on, ordinary and chaotic, bound together by invisible threads of sound. You sigh, leaning your head back, and let the hum of silence wrap around you once more. For now, the bells rest. But you know they are waiting, patient and powerful, ready to roar again at your command. And when they do, the town will listen, not just to bronze, but to centuries of belief echoing through every strike. Midnight creeps into the tower like a slow tide, and you find yourself sitting upright on the plank that passes for your bed, staring into the thick dark. The cathedral below has long since closed its doors. The town square has emptied, and even the taverns seem hushed. Only the occasional dog barks, and even that sound fades quickly into the shadows. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, but the cold of the stone seeps in regardless. The tower is lonelier at midnight than at any other time. And yet, it is not silent. The beams creak faintly as they settle. Ropes sway just enough to groan against their pegs, and pigeons stir occasionally with sleepy coos. Most unsettling of all is the bell itself. Though unmoving, you would swear it hums faintly, as though bronze has a heartbeat of its own. Every now and then, you think you hear a faint clang, far too soft to be real, echoing through the chamber like a whisper of sound that slipped through from another world. Villagers whisper that ringing the bells at midnight tempts spirits. Some say ghosts wander the streets at that hour, drawn by the vibrations, eager to slip inside the tower and perch unseen among the beams. Others claim the devil himself takes interest in midnight tolls, curious about the audacity of humans daring to summon sound when all proper souls should be asleep. Quirky, perhaps, but sitting here in the half-dark, with every creak amplified and every shadow stretched long, you almost believe them. Historians still argue whether such superstitions grew out of actual midnight ringing, perhaps emergency alarms, perhaps rare rituals, or whether they were simply village tales told to keep children indoors after dusk. Either way, the stories cling stubbornly to the tower walls, carried in whispers across centuries. Tonight, you feel their weight pressing in on you. The moon spills through the arched windows, a pale wash that paints the beams silver. You rise and pace slowly across the loft, footsteps muffled by dust. Each creak of the plank sounds louder than it should. You pause, listening, half expecting to hear footsteps that are not yours. For a moment, you convince yourself you are not alone. The feeling prickles your skin, and you laugh nervously to chase it away. If there are ghosts here, you whisper, they had better be prepared to take a turn on the ropes. Your laugh fades quickly into the rafters. The pigeons rustle, unimpressed, and the chamber settles back into uneasy quiet. You stand at the window and peer down into the square. It is deserted now, lanterns extinguished, streets slick with moonlight. The fountain glimmers faintly, a mirror for the stars. In one corner, a stray dog noses through scraps, but otherwise the town is still, as though holding its breath. The bells hang motionless above you, shadows in the rafters. You tilt your head, half expecting them to sway on their own. The idea is ridiculous, yet your tired mind entertains it. After all, you dreamed of phantom tolls before. What if tonight the dream bleeds into reality? What if the clapper moves without your hands, striking bronze at midnight, summoning echoes that roll through the empty streets? You shiver, imagining villagers waking in fear, muttering that the dead walk again. You return to your plank and sit heavily, cloak wrapped tight, ears straining against silence. You know sleep will not come easily tonight. Each time your eyelids droop, a new sound jerks you awake. A pigeon shifting, a rope groaning, a drip of water hitting stone. Your nerves are stretched thin, each vibration amplified. Fatigue presses down, but your mind refuses rest. You distract yourself with bread, chewing slowly despite its hardness. The act of eating grounds you, pulling you back from the edge of unease. You mutter about how even ghosts would spit out bread this stale. The pigeons coo in response, as though agreeing. You chuckle softly, the tension easing just enough for your shoulders to drop. Humor, as always, is your shield. Still, when a gust of wind pushes through the window, rattling the ropes, your heart leaps into your throat. For a split second, you hear the faintest clang, too light to be a true toll, but enough to stir your imagination. You freeze, breath caught, waiting for more. Nothing follows, just silence. You exhale slowly, shaking your head. Historians can argue all they want, you murmur, but this tower has its own opinions. The night drags on. Hours feel like days. You pace again, stretching limbs stiff from stillness. The bells loom above, silent but watchful. You glance at the graffiti etched into the beams, suddenly grateful for the crude drawings. They are proof that others endured nights like this, carving marks to keep themselves sane. Perhaps they too imagined ghostly tolls, footsteps in the stairwell, shadows that moved without cause. At last, the faintest gray creeps into the horizon. Dawn is not here yet, but the sky is shifting, softening. You breathe deeply, relieved. The worst of the night is passing. The spirits, if they exist, are retreating to their corners. The bells remain still, as they always have, their power leashed until your hands tug the ropes. You slump against the wall, eyelids heavy. The tower feels less menacing now, more familiar again. The pigeons preen lazily, the ropes sway gently, and the silence grows less oppressive. You close your eyes briefly, whispering, "Another night survived." And though exhaustion pulls at you, there is a small spark of pride. Midnight may test the nerves of a ringer, but you have endured. Tomorrow, or rather, today, the bells will demand your strength again. But for now, in this fragile moment between dark and light, you rest in uneasy peace. Dawn breaks reluctantly after your haunted midnight, and you rise with limbs that feel heavier than the bells themselves. Every muscle protests as you stretch, your palms stinging when you flex your fingers. Blisters have deepened into raw patches, angry red against the pale skin of your hands. You rub them gently, though there is little comfort to be found. The ropes will not forgive weakness, and the bells certainly won't wait until your skin heals. The air in the tower is cold, damp from the night's dew. You pace slowly across the planks, loosening your stiff legs, listening to the faint creak of the beams. Outside, the town begins to stir, though faintly. A rooster crows somewhere distant, answered by another across the fields. The marketplace is still empty, but smoke curls lazily from chimneys, signaling that bakers and brewers are already at work. You sigh, knowing that in only minutes you will be gripping the ropes again, coaxing bronze into thunder. You glance at the thick rope nearest to you, tar still dark against its twisted fibers. You reach for it, hesitating just a moment, before wrapping your palms around the rough surface. Even the lightest touch makes your skin sting. You grit your teeth and pull, the bell stirring sluggishly at first, then swinging into motion. The first clang of dawn rips through the chamber, echoing down the stairwell and into the streets. You stagger slightly at the impact, shoulders trembling. The bell's voice is merciless, but you hold on. Pull after pull, your body falls into rhythm. The sound rolls outward, rattling pigeons from their roosts, sending them flapping wildly through the loft. The vibration courses through your ribs, shaking the fatigue from your bones, though at a punishing cost. By the time the sequence ends, your hands are rawer still, small beads of blood darkening the rope fibers. You slump against the beam, chest heaving, heart pounding, and laugh weakly. "Well," you mutter, "at least it's not boring." The morning stretches on, and between tolls you occupy yourself with small tasks. You retie a frayed knot on one of the thinner ropes, brush dust from the beam you sit on, and even attempt to shoo away the pigeons more permanently. They ignore you, of course, bobbing their heads with smug defiance. One even lands on the rope you just used, cooing loudly as if to mock your effort. You roll your eyes. "If you're so eager," you say, "why don't you take a turn pulling?" The bird blinks, unimpressed, before fluttering away. As you rest, your mind drifts toward the reality of the job. The work is not glamorous, nor is it truly respected. Bell ringers were often seen as necessary, but unremarkable. Their names forgotten even as their labor marked every hour of life in the town. Quirky detail. In some villages, the role was passed down through families, generation after generation, as though one's blood carried the strength for ropes. You wonder if those families ever regretted the inheritance. Historians still argue whether bell ringers were considered servants of the church or servants of the town itself. The truth, you suspect, lies somewhere in between. You are employed by both, bound to the cathedral's schedule, yet serving the townsfolk who measure their days by the clang of bronze. You exist in the liminal space between sacred duty and civic necessity, and perhaps that is why you feel so invisible. The bells command attention, but you, their ringer, are cloaked in anonymity. You peel back your sleeve to wipe your forehead and notice bruises blooming along your forearms, dark patches where the rope has pressed too hard. Your body is becoming a ledger of the bell's demands, every mark a tally of hours served. You wince as you flex your arm, but you know you'll pull again at noon. Complaining to the bells would be as effective as arguing with the rain. When the sun climbs higher, spilling gold through the arched windows, you eat your meager breakfast. Bread, tougher than ever, and a small strip of dried meat. You chew slowly, savoring the faint salt, trying not to think about how many more meals will taste just as bland. Still, it fuels you, and you swallow the last bite with a sigh of gratitude. You wander the loft afterward, tracing the carvings on the beams again. One set of initials stands out more clearly now, perhaps because your mind craves connection. The letters are rough but legible, followed by a date centuries old. You rest your hand on them, whispering softly, "I know how you felt." Whether the ringer who carved them sought remembrance, relief, or rebellion, you understand the impulse. To leave a mark is to prove you existed, if only in scratches on forgotten wood. The hours between tolls crawl. You stretch, pace, and attempt to nap, though the phantom ringing in your ears refuses to allow true rest. When the noon signal comes, you rise slowly, hands wrapped in strips of cloth you tore from your cloak for protection. It helps a little, but the sting still seeps through. You pull the rope anyway, each clang rattling your bones, each strike pulling curses from your lips that vanish under the bronze roar. By the end, you collapse onto the beam, cloth strips darkened with fresh stains. Afternoon light warms the chamber, dust swirling lazily in the beams of sun. You lie back, staring upward, listening to the pigeons cooing softly. Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, you feel a strange calm settle in. This is your world now. Ropes, bronze, dust, pigeons, and the hum of sound that never truly fades. You close your eyes and think of the town below, the villagers living their lives to the rhythm you provide. They may never thank you, may never even think of you. But you are part of their world, all the same. Their meals, their prayers, their quarrels, all measured by the bell you pull. The thought steadies you, even as your hands throb. As evening approaches, you brace yourself for another toll. The bells will demand, and you will answer. Blisters, bruises, exhaustion. It all fades under the command of bronze. You grip the rope once more, teeth clenched, and pull. The sound roars out into the twilight, steady and strong. A reminder that no matter how much you ache, the bells will always have the last word. When the sequence ends, you slump back, trembling but unbroken. Another day marked, another round survived. You close your eyes, listening to the faint hum lingering in your bones, and whisper, "Still here." The next morning greets you not with silence, but with gossip carried upward from the square. As you lean against the window ledge between tolls, you hear snatches of voices rising with the breeze. The town is alive with chatter about bells, not yours specifically, but bells from a rival cathedral in the next town over. You catch words like louder, prouder, and even better cast, spoken with the smugness of villagers who enjoy a little rivalry at the expense of someone else's arms. It seems the town nearby has recently installed a new bell, grander and heavier, meant to outshine all others. The locals brag that their sound can be heard farther across the valley, and some here, ever eager for competition, repeat the claim with envy. You roll your eyes, muttering, as though noise were a contest. Still, you can't help but feel a spark of indignation. After days of blisters and bruises, you'd like some recognition for the thunder you've dragged from these ropes. Historians still argue whether such rivalries were friendly or fierce. Some records suggest neighboring towns deliberately scheduled peals to overlap, each trying to drown out the other. Imagine the chaos of two great bronze voices clashing across fields, neither willing to yield. You picture farmers caught between the two, clutching their ears, wondering if they'll ever hear silence again. You step back from the window and glance at the bells above. They hang silently now, but you imagine them bristling with pride, unwilling to be outshone. Bells are not just instruments. They are symbols, declarations cast in bronze. Every town wants the loudest, the deepest, the most impressive. You smile faintly, patting the thick rope. "Don't worry," you whisper. "You're still the loudest to me." When the noon toll arrives, you throw yourself into the task with extra vigor. Each pull is a challenge, each clang a declaration hurled across the valley. The bell roars with familiar force, and you imagine it carrying farther than usual, straining against distance to prove its might. Below, villagers pause mid-task, some glancing toward the horizon, as if daring the rival town to answer back. You can almost taste the pride rising with each echo. Your arms burn, your palms scream, but you keep pulling, fueled by something beyond duty. Rivalry, even imagined, has sharpened your resolve. The sequence ends only when your shoulders feel as though they might snap. You release the rope, collapsing onto the beam, chest heaving. The chamber thrums with fading resonance, your own heartbeat racing to match it. Between tolls, you let yourself drift into thought. What is it about sound that drives people to compete? A bell is not a blade, not a wall, not a coin, and yet it commands attention like all three. Quirky fact: in some medieval chronicles, towns measured their pride not by walls or markets, but by the size and sound of their bells. To be heard was to be respected, and to be respected was to hold power. You sip from your water jug, cool liquid soothing your dry throat. The pigeons shuffle above, indifferent to your efforts. though one seems to eye you curiously. You chuckle softly. Perhaps you'd prefer the rival tower, you say. Less work, more crumbs. The bird blinks, then turns away, unimpressed. The afternoon drifts on. You stretch your aching limbs, nibble stale bread, and watch the town below. Villagers continue to gossip, pointing toward the horizon, where the rival tower supposedly gleams. Some seem envious, others defensive. But all of them speak as though bells were the very heart of civic pride. You shake your head, amused. For them, it's a contest. For you, it's pain and rope burn. By evening, when the toll is required again, your determination hardens. You grip the rope with blistered hands, cloth strips tied tightly around your palms. With every pull, you imagine the rival bell ringer struggling with his own rope, cursing under his breath. The thought makes you grin, even as sweat pours down your face. Your bell roars into the twilight, each clang a boast hurled into the fading sky. The square below reacts as always, candles lit, villagers hurrying home, laughter spilling from taverns. But tonight, there's an edge to the atmosphere. The townsfolk speak more loudly, stride more confidently, as though the bell has lent them its pride. Perhaps rivalry isn't so foolish after all. Perhaps it gives the sound more weight, binding people together in defiance of a neighbor's claim. You collapse onto your plank afterward, body trembling, but your spirit oddly lighter. For the first time, you feel not just the burden of duty, but the fire of competition. The bells are more than timekeepers. They are voices in an argument that stretches across valleys and decades. And tonight, you believe your bell has spoken louder. Historians still argue whether such rivalries improved craftsmanship or simply wasted energy. You suspect both are true. Competition may bruise arms and palms, but it also fuels pride. And pride keeps the ropes moving. You close your eyes, listening to the fading hum in your bones, and smile faintly. The pigeons settle above, the town quiets below, and the tower breathes its usual rhythm of creaks and sighs. You shift on your plank, cloak pulled tight, and whisper into the dark. Sleep well, rivals. We'll see who wins tomorrow. The day begins as so many others have in this tower, with aching limbs, blistered palms, and the faint vibration of yesterday's tolls still humming in your bones. You stretch slowly, rolling your shoulders, grimacing at the tightness in your back. Another day of pulling ropes, another day of commanding the town through bronze voices. You shuffle toward the window, peering down at the square below. At first, it seems ordinary. Merchants setting up stalls, children chasing each other, dogs nosing through scraps. But soon, the noise shifts, rising in a way that feels sharper, less like chatter and more like confrontation. You squint, leaning farther out the window. Two groups of men stand near the fountain, gesturing angrily. Their voices carry upward in bursts, accusations, insults, the sort of words that escalate quickly. You watch as others gather, forming a loose circle, half interested, half eager for spectacle. The marketplace is no stranger to quarrels, but today the tension feels different, heavier, like the air before a storm. The signal for the noon toll comes, and you grip the rope with weary hands. You hesitate for a moment, glancing at the crowd below. Perhaps the sound will settle them. Bells often serve as referee after all. You brace your feet, tug hard, and the bell stirs into motion. The first clang rolls outward, shaking dust from the beams. The marketplace pauses, heads turning upward. For a heartbeat, silence holds. Then, as the sound fades, the shouting resumes. louder than before. You pull again, the rope jerking against your blistered palms. The bell booms, commanding attention. Some villagers step back, murmuring, perhaps reminded of order. But others seem to take the toll as fuel, voices rising to compete with the bronze thunder. You grimace, sweat dripping into your eyes, and pull harder, as though the sound itself might force calm into the crowd. Quirky fact: in certain towns, bells were indeed used as instruments of discipline. A sudden toll could disperse gatherings, summon guards, or signal curfew. The idea was simple. Let sound do what swords could not. Historians still argue whether this was truly effective or merely symbolic. Judging from the scene below, you suspect the latter. The fight escalates. You see a man shove another, sending him sprawling against a cart. The crowd roars, half in shock, half in encouragement. The butcher waves a cleaver, not at meat, but in warning. Someone else brandishes a broom like a spear. You wince, pulling the rope again, desperate to drown them out. The bell roars, echoing across rooftops, rattling pigeons from their perches. But the clash below grows louder, fists flying now, curses flung with abandon. Your arms ache, your palms scream, but you keep pulling, hoping the rhythm might cut through chaos. For a moment, it seems to work. The crowd stumbles back, startled by the sheer force of the clangs. A woman drags a child away, muttering prayers. But then a jug shatters on the cobbles, and the frenzy surges again. You slump against the beam between pulls, panting, frustrated. The bells are mighty, but they are not magic. They cannot quell tempers or mend pride. You glance upward at the bronze giant, its mouth yawning as it swings, and whisper, "Not even you can drown this." Still, you pull until the sequence ends, the final clang rolling away into silence. The rope slackens in your hands, leaving your palms raw and trembling. You stagger back, chest heaving, and peer out once more. The square is a mess of overturned carts, scattered produce, and bruised villagers nursing wounds. The fight has not ended, but it has broken into smaller skirmishes. The energy diffused, if not dissolved. Perhaps the bell did its work after all, though not as cleanly as you wished. You sink onto your plank, head in your hands. The irony stings. The bell is meant to unify, yet today it became part of the chaos. You chew slowly on a piece of bread, though the taste is dull. You wash it down with a sip of water, staring blankly at the graffiti carved into the beams. The initials and crude drawings seem almost mocking, as though past ringers endured scenes just as absurd and left their marks out of weary defiance. Later in the afternoon, the marketplace buzz continues. Villagers repair stalls, sweep broken glass, and mutter about who started the fight. Some joke that the bell tried to scold them. Others insist it encouraged the brawl. You sigh, resting your forehead against the cool stone of the window ledge. It seems your efforts are interpreted however people wish. The bell's voice is mighty, but its meaning lies in the ears of those who hear it. Evening approaches, and with it another toll. Your body protests, but you rise anyway, wrapping your palms in strips of cloth. The rope bites into them as always, and the bell answers with its heavy voice. This time, the square below grows still, villagers pausing in their work, eyes turned upward. The clangs roll into the twilight, less like commands and more like sighs. Perhaps the memory of the day's chaos makes them listen more closely now. Perhaps they hear not just bronze, but a call to quiet. When the sequence ends, you let the rope slip free, arms trembling. The chamber hums with fading resonance, pigeons cooing softly above. You collapse onto your plank, staring at the beams until your vision blurs. Exhaustion presses down, heavier than the bells themselves. Historians still argue whether bells were tools of peace or weapons of control. Tonight, you are too tired to care. All you know is that your body aches, your hands bleed, and your ears ring with echoes that will not fade. Yet tomorrow, you will pull again, because that is the rhythm of the tower. You close your eyes, cloak pulled tight, listening to the square quieting below. Despite the bruises, despite the quarrels, life resumes. The baker sweeps crumbs, the brewer locks barrels, the children are dragged indoors. The town endures, as it always does, and so must you. The pigeons settle, the beams creak, and the tower breathes in time with your weary lungs. You whisper into the dark, another day survived, before drifting into uneasy rest, already bracing for tomorrow's demands. The final dawn of your 7-day vigil begins with a sky washed pale, a thin ribbon of gold slipping over the horizon. You stir from uneasy sleep, cloak tangled around your legs, body groaning with the effort of moving at all. Each muscle feels like stone, stiff and unwilling, as though your very bones have been forged from bronze to match the bells above. You push yourself upright on the plank, flex your hands, and hiss softly at the sting. The blisters have split open in places, skin raw and angry, cloth wrappings stained dark from repeated strain. The chamber is cool and quiet, the kind of silence that carries anticipation within it. The ropes hang in their usual stillness, but they seem to twitch with eagerness, waiting for your grip. Above, the bells loom like patient giants, their bronze mouths gaping in silent hunger. Today is not just another toll, it is the last toll, the crowning roar that will seal your week of labor. You rise slowly, shoulders aching, and shuffle toward the ropes. Through the window, the town stirs with a different energy. Villagers bustle about with purpose, as though aware that this day is marked for more than routine. A few glance upward toward the tower, shading their eyes, perhaps knowing that your vigil ends today. Banners from the feast still hang across the square, damp from rain, but fluttering faintly in the breeze. Children chase each other around the fountain, laughter carrying upward, while vendors sweep stalls in preparation for another day of trade. You rest your hands on the rope, inhaling deeply. The fibers are rough against broken skin, but you tighten your grip anyway. The signal comes, faint but clear, and you brace your feet. With a deep breath, you pull, and the bell stirs. Slow at first, reluctant, then gathering momentum. The clapper swings, strikes bronze, and the chamber detonates with sound. The final toll has begun. The vibration surges through your arms, shoulders, chest, until your entire body hums with resonance. The sound pours out over the town, washing across rooftops, echoing through narrow alleys, rattling the fountain's surface into ripples. Pigeons explode from their perches, wheeling in frantic spirals. Dogs bark, children shriek with delight, and villagers pause mid-step to listen. The bell's voice is deeper than ever, richer, as though it knows this is no ordinary ringing. You pull again, harder this time, muscles screaming, but spirit burning. Each clang is a triumph, a declaration. You imagine rival towns listening, hearing the thunder roll across the valley, forced to admit that your bell still reigns supreme. The rope jerks in your hands, sweat stings your eyes, and your breath comes ragged. But you do not falter. This is your last chance to prove yourself to the bronze giants, to the town, even to the ghosts of ringers carved into the beams. Historians still argue whether final tolls were marked with special ceremony or simply endured like every other. But here, in this moment, it feels ceremonial to you. Every strike is layered with meaning. Pain endured, hours survived, silence conquered. You think of the storm that tested you, the feast that drained you, the midnight whispers that unsettled you, the marketplace brawl you tried to calm. All of it folds into this sound, into this one great voice of bronze. The square below transforms. People gather near the fountain, looking upward, some crossing themselves, others clapping in rhythm with the clangs. Children cheer, waving ragged flags left over from the feast. Even merchants pause their bargaining, leaning against stalls to listen. The bell binds them, for this moment at least, uniting them under a single vibration. You feel a surge of pride that almost overwhelms the pain in your palms. Quirky lore drifts into your thoughts. Some believed that the final toll of a bell ringer's service carried a special blessing, an invisible gift left in the air for those who heard it. Perhaps that belief lingers in the villagers now, their faces lifted, their eyes bright. You like to think the sound carries a piece of you, echoing long after your arms fall still. The sequence grows longer, heavier. Your breath comes in gasps, sweat dripping freely. Each pull feels like the last you can manage, yet you find strength to pull again. Your body is a machine of pain and rhythm. Your hands nothing but raw tools wrapped around rough rope. You no longer think about the blisters, the bruises, the exhaustion. You think only of sound, pure, overwhelming, endless. At last, with one final heave, the clapper slams against bronze, and the bell roars its deepest note. The vibration seems to freeze time. Dust shakes loose from the rafters. Pigeons scatter again, and your own heart feels as though it might burst. Then the rope slackens, the bell slows, and the thunder fades into silence. You collapse backward onto the plank, chest heaving, arms trembling uncontrollably. Your palms burn, your body aches, but your spirit soars. You did it. 7 days of ringing, countless tolls, storms and feasts and sleepless nights, and you endured. The chamber hums faintly with the aftertaste of sound, a ghostly echo that settles into your bones. You drag yourself upright, staggering to the window. The square below bursts with life. Villagers cheer faintly, clapping, calling to each other. Some bow their heads in prayer. Others laugh with relief. The final toll has bound them all together, if only for a moment. You smile weakly, leaning on the stone ledge for support. The pigeons return cautiously, circling before settling back on their beams. You chuckle softly. Yes, yes, I'm finished, you whisper. The ropes are yours again. The birds coo as though in agreement, unbothered by your exhaustion. Historians still argue whether bell ringers were ever celebrated for their service, or simply forgotten once their duty ended. Standing here now, you suspect the latter. The villagers below may never know your name, may never think of the raw hands that dragged bronze into thunder. But you know, and that is enough. Your body carries the proof, every blister and bruise a testament. You sink onto the plank again, cloak pulled tight, listening to the fading hum in your bones. The tower is quiet now, but not empty. It holds the echoes of your labor, the whispers of past ringers, the weight of bronze that will outlast you. You close your eyes, breathing slowly, letting pride mingle with fatigue. Your vigil is complete. The final dawn has spoken, and the bells, for now, are satisfied. The climb down begins slowly, almost reverently, as though the stairwell itself knows your vigil has ended. Your legs are unsteady, trembling from days of strain, but each step downward feels lighter than those that dragged you upward. The stones are familiar now, worn hollows under your boots, cold walls brushing your shoulder with every spiral. The narrow slits of windows spill morning light in sharp angles, illuminating dust that drifts lazily, as if the tower is finally exhaling. You pause halfway, pressing your palm to the wall. The rough surface leaves chalky residue on your already raw skin, but you welcome the sting. It reminds you that the labor is finished. The rope burns, the blisters, the aches in your shoulders, all of it will fade. What remains is the memory of sound, the thunder of bronze that you carried into the world each day. You close your eyes briefly, hearing again the roar of the final toll, still echoing faintly in your bones. Lower still, the stairwell widens, and you glimpse through the slit window the square below. The town stirs with its ordinary bustle, merchants arranging stalls, children darting between carts, women carrying baskets. Yet something in their rhythm feels softened. Perhaps it is only your imagination, but you sense that yesterday's final toll lingers over them still, binding them together in subtle ways. They do not look up at the tower, not now, but the memory of your work clings invisibly to their day. You descend further, passing the crooked wooden door you opened days ago. The cracked bucket, the coil of rope, the soot-blackened lantern remain unchanged, relics of labor left behind by ringers long gone. You nod faintly to them, silent acknowledgement of the lineage you joined. Their hands gripped ropes just as yours did. Their bodies ached as yours does. Their names forgotten, yet etched into the beams above. You feel kinship with those shadows, companions in exhaustion. The stairwell narrows again, spiraling downward with relentless monotony. Yet this time, there is no dread, no anticipation of struggle. Each turn brings you closer to earth, closer to quiet streets, closer to release. You find yourself humming softly, almost laughing, though the sound catches in your dry throat. Perhaps fatigue has unmoored you, but joy bubbles faintly nonetheless. At last you emerge from the tower's base into the open air. The sudden brightness makes you squint, the sunlight dazzling after days in shadow. The square stretches before you, cobbles slick with dew, voices rising in the morning bustle. A few villagers glance your way, curious, but most pass without recognition. To them, you are simply another figure descending from the tower, no more remarkable than a baker leaving his oven or a merchant setting his stall. You smile faintly at the anonymity. The bells sang, but the singer vanishes quietly. You stand still for a long moment, breathing deeply. The air is fresher here, touched with scents of bread, hay, and smoke. The weight of the tower has lifted from your shoulders. Yet your ears still hum, phantom tolls echoing within you. They may linger for days, perhaps longer, fading only when silence truly settles. You accept them as parting gifts, reminders that sound leaves traces in flesh as well as stone. You step into the street, boots striking cobbles with renewed steadiness. The world feels sharper now. The chatter of merchants, the clatter of wheels, the laughter of children. Each sound competes for your attention, yet none carries the force of bronze thunder. You almost miss it, even as you savor the absence. To live without bells is to walk in gentler air. Historians still argue whether bell ringers shaped history or merely echoed it. Standing here now, you believe both are true. You were a servant of time, but also its herald. You endured storms, feasts, quarrels, and ghosts of midnight, binding them together through sound. And though your name may never be carved into chronicles, the echoes of your labor live on in the rhythms of the town. You turn once more to glance at the tower. Its silhouette looms against the sky, solemn and unyielding. The pigeons wheel lazily around its peak, guardians of bronze that will outlast you. You raise a hand in quiet farewell. The ropes, the beams, the carvings, the dust, all remain within, waiting for the next weary figure to climb. You hope they endure it with humor enough to laugh at pigeons, and stubbornness enough to wrestle bronze until their arms tremble. Then you lower your hand, turn away, and step into the crowd. The voices of the town envelop you, pulling you back into ordinary life. The bells rest behind you, silent for now, their echoes folded into memory. Your vigil is complete, and the world feels softer for it. The story slows here, softening like dusk settling over a quiet street. The clang of bronze has faded, leaving only the gentler hum of your own breath. You walk slowly through the town, but the noise no longer weighs on you. The voices of merchants blur into a background murmur. The clatter of carts softens into rhythm. The laughter of children melts into a distant song. The sharpness of the world begins to blur, edges dissolving into calm haze. Your body, worn by labor, finds relief in stillness. Muscles loosen, hands unclench, shoulders release the weight they carried. Each step feels lighter than the last, as though you are moving not across cobblestones, but through water, drifting rather than walking. The tower remains behind, a shadow among shadows, and its echoes now curl gently, like fading ripples on a pond. You close your eyes for a moment, and silence settles deeper. No ropes to pull, no bronze to answer, only the quiet rhythm of your breath. The fatigue becomes comfort, the soreness becomes warmth. You sink into that stillness, letting it wash over you, carrying away the memory of blisters and bruises. There is no hurry here. The world waits patiently, softened by the night, eased by distance. You find yourself leaning into that peace, surrendering to the calm, drifting toward rest, as though the very air is guiding you downward. The bells are quiet, the town is gentle, and you are safe. Now, let your breath slow, let your body ease. Feel the quiet seep deeper, filling every corner of thought. The journey is over, the echoes have faded, and you are ready to rest. Sweet dreams wait, calm and close.